Hey there, welcome to another episode of Shivangi Pandey.I. I'm your host Shivangi Pandey. If you have not subscribed my channel yet, please subscribe to it. In today's video, we will discuss about watercolor. So the most common struggle people have while starting their journey in art is either they don't find time or they are too much overwhelmed. For me, creating watercolor painting is to relaxing myself while creating small pieces of art. But don't worry, I am here to guide you step by step in your art journey. In this video, I am going to paint a piece of art while explaining to you the two basic techniques in watercolor, wet on wet and wet on dry. I will also tell you how to set up your space and what basic equipment you will need to just start your paintings. And I will tell you why I prefer watercolor over acrylics and oils for beginners. So let's start painting and I will explain you step by step. So for painting with watercolor, you will need watercolors. I am using here Faber-Castell Artist Quality watercolor. You will also need watercolor sheets. It's 100% cotton, acid-free watercolor sheet. Please use only watercolor sheets for painting in this medium. You will need masking tape for giving your painting a clean look. Then you will need few brushes and a tissue paper or cloth for wiping your brush. For setting up your space, you will need 2 jars of water, one for cleaning your brushes and one for mixing the colors. You have to put masking tape on all the 4 sides of your sheet and you have to wet your painting surface to start wet on wet technique. And then you have to dilute your paint in water and put on the painting area. So here in wet on wet technique, you will see how the colors are spreading and mixing in themselves. If you want to give a cool shading or you want to give a dramatic look to your painting, then you should apply wet on wet technique. The colors spread smoothly and enhance the look of your painting and the shading will come automatically very beautiful. So for applying wet on dry technique, either you should wait your painting to get completely dry or you can also use a dryer to dry your painting. So here the process is going on wet technique only. When I will finish the shading and I will be satisfied with the shading, I will let it dry. So I am using a dryer to dry my painting completely so that I can use the next technique, which is wet on dry. Wet on dry technique is used where you want to paint a certain shape or a certain object on your painting. So here I am making the mountains and the trees with thin brush. So the painting beneath is completely dry and I am using a wet paint to make a mountain and trees. Now as you can see, I was not very much satisfied with the mountains shading. So for doing shading, we will again use wet on wet technique. So I completely wet the mountains area and then I am using the wet color to give the shading. Until you are not satisfied, you can use wet on wet technique to give the shading and dry your painting with dryer or let it be dry itself. So it's all depend on you. When you are satisfied with your shading, you can make the objects you want to make in your paintings. So now I am almost done with my shading work. So I am now again using wet on dry technique to paint the trees. The color is wet, the black color. It's diluted in water and the painting surface beneath is almost dry. So now with the help of thin brush, I am making the trees. So if your painting will be wet beneath and you will try to make the tree, the colors will spread and your tree will not look good. Now again for shading in the mountains, I am giving the effect with the help of wet on wet technique. So I think you all have understood where to use wet on wet technique and where to use wet on dry technique. If in case you have any kind of doubt in wet on wet technique or wet on dry technique, you can put your questions in the comment box. I will try to answer your questions and resolve your doubts. Hope this video helps you to understand wet on wet technique and wet on dry technique. In next video, I will show you some other watercolor paintings to understand you the techniques in more depth. So why I prefer watercolors over oil and acrylic? Because watercolor is an easy medium to learn. You can learn it easily and you don't need much equipment to start watercolor painting. You only need few things and you can on the go start your painting. So see you in my next video. Hope you enjoyed. Bye bye.